Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for continuing March, because I don't know if we want to go into April yet. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. No idea. What we maybe want to do is we want to get ourselves a little bit of extra help, because at this time, in this kind of atmosphere, in this type of situation, going about things by yourself is maybe not the best thing to do. You need to get yourself a little bit of extra help. Now, you can either rely on family and friends to help you, and sometimes you need to stick your hand into your back pocket and get out some silver to help you. Sometimes you need to get yourself a little bit of a Squire for hire. That's what I'm saying. And if we're talking money and we're talking trade, I need to get myself a merchant on the job. I don't just need any old merchant. I need John Merchant on the job. So joining me to talk about Squire for Hire and the Mystic Ruins, the core set number 2, I've got John Merchant. So there you go.
Hey, thanks for the amazing lead-in.
Hey, John.
Thanks for having me on.
That's it. You're very, 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 very welcome indeed. How you doing, first of all? Because, yeah, how are you, first of all, I guess is the first question.
I'm doing fantastic, thank you. We're, doing well in isolation.
How long have you been in isolation for?
It's going on 2 weeks now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there quite a lot in your house? I mean, is it yourself and your partner, or is there you and like several million dogs, or?
Not several million, but so it's me, my fiance, and what she wishes was 7 million dogs. But no, we have 2 dogs. So
awesome. So
they keep us busy enough.
Are you able to take them out and about and go for walks and things like that, or you got to be completely on lockdown? Because you can go where you want.
Yeah, no, we're not on full lockdown. We can walk out and about and give everyone suspicious looks when we walk by them. So.
Yeah. If you've got dogs, you've got to tell us, what kind of dogs have you got?
Sure, we have a small Chihuahua Papillon mix.
All right, cool.
And it's and our other one is a Boston Terrier crossed with a Spaniel, and both of them like to bark. So
wow, do you have jackets for them when you're going out?
Yeah, we do. Sometimes it's a little too cold for them, so yeah.
Yeah. Take it you haven't gone as far as boots. Have you gone as far as boots at all? Do you put them in little doggy boots as well?
We've the fiance's tried.
Oh,
it didn't last very long, more than like 30 seconds.
Did you take them outside and say, I'm not having
nope.
having this on my dog? It's just not.
Yeah, they didn't want
going
it.
To
none of that
be happening. Squire for Hire, the Mystic Ruins, the core set 2. I mean, this sounds like, first of all, it's one of the biggest names I've ever seen of a Kickstarter campaign. I don't know who advised you, Sharp and Snappy, but obviously, I don't know if you made that meeting. But this is the follow-up to the original Squire for Hire, which was September-ish last year,
it was.
If I remember correctly.
Yep, last September.
So we'll talk. I mean, obviously, we will talk about this eventually, as is my modus operandi and everything like that. But originally, obviously, you did the original kind of Squire for Hire kind of Kickstarter campaign. So where are you with that in terms of kind of like fulfillment and everything like that for that first kind of venture?
So the first one actually went unusually smoothly from what I gathered most Kickstarters usually end up happening. So we I launched it myself in September, and through the course of that, I had my own plan for manufacturing and distribution and everything. And when Dan from Letiman Games came on, our kind of process for doing all of that kind of lined up, and we wanted to partner on it. So we went ahead, got it manufactured, got it sent out within by mid-December. Some typical hiccups and delays with some backers, but it went really smoothly, and I think we have almost everyone has received their copy now.
So yeah. You kind of under this. So when obviously the latest set of circumstances kind of hit, are you just like, yeah, okay, you're just all trying to test me now? I'm just
yeah, because it can't go smoothly twice, so obviously it has to.
I was
have
a
wrench thrown in there.
Yeah, I was maybe expecting us to maybe not hit Chinese New Year, or there was some, we got the white samples back, and maybe there was a couple of misalignments. I didn't realise I kind of would have to deal with like a worldwide pandemic. Challenge accepted. Kind of
thing. We knew that obviously the factories and stuff were shutting down, so we kind of factored that into our timeline for this campaign, and should hopefully go smoothly, because I hear that the factories are back up and running now. Yeah. So as long as everyone stays home, stays safe and healthy, I think things should be looking up.
I mean, how long have you been involved in kind of like tabletop? Because I know that your main wheelhouse is you're an artist.
I am.
That's your kind of your main kind of your jam. But how long have you been kind of involved in the tabletop space yourself? What's your kind of your journey been like so far? Yeah,
so I guess unofficially, since I was a kid, I was always making small games or making my own versions of other games that existed, whether it was like a Super Mario Brothers themed Monopoly or something to that effect. Like I was just always making something, and I up until about 3-4 years ago, I started making my own micro games through prototype sites like the Game Crafter. So I kind of got my start more recently then, just by kind of doing my own art and realizing, hey, I can illustrate and do the graphic design, and I really like the idea of making something that I can use or play afterwards, and just kind of dove in head first from there.
So are you a freelance kind of graphic designer, artist, illustrator by trade then? Is that what you do in your kind of your job?
Yeah, well, not my day job. My day job has been everything from project management to managing a record center or a shredding company, like completely unrelated things. But my primary side hustle job has always been art and design for sure. So I've always done graphic design for book covers and CDs, painting commissions. Like I've done gallery shows and things like that. So it's been a very wide variety of everything. And all those things kind of lent themselves very well to mashing them together for tabletop games. So I think I've kind of found my little niche.
Is that is that what you studied at like kind of college and things like that? Did you go to like an art kind of course at college then?
Yeah, so there's a local college here in my hometown where they have a really great art program, and so I went through for fine art. So that covers everything from printmaking, sculpture, drawing, all that kind of stuff.
So what's your favorite medium then?
I'd say my favorite is probably pastels.
Oh, okay.
But I sell probably more watercolors than anything.
Okay. And what kind of stuff? We will talk about the game, but
yeah, that's fine. But I do animals.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, so it's probably no surprise that Mystic Runes and Squire for Hire is animals, but but yeah, I've always done a lot of birds and a lot of animal drawings, stuff like that.
And is it kind of real life animal drawings, or is it kind of the anthropomorphic kind of stuff that you've got like in Squire for Hire?
No, yeah, typically more abstract stuff. So I do realism, but typically more of the abstract kind of thing. So you can kind of get an idea that this is a bird with, this might be a blue jay, but it's not incredibly detailed, or it might be a little changed in certain ways. So yeah, I like to hint at what something is as opposed to drawing it fully realistic. Is
it difficult to do that? Is it difficult to kind of get that across then? I mean, when you're drawing a piece, have you settled into a kind of like a style that you're comfortable with, and that people who get your work will be able to look at something and go, oh yeah, that's a penguin, or that's a giraffe, or that's a definite kind of duck.
Yeah, it's definitely like that style recognition, I guess you'd call it. So it's not like it's completely abstract where I'm trying to draw a penguin using 3 triangles or something. It's more or less it's still a representation of that animal. But
because I'm just looking at your frog.
Oh, you found the frog.
I've found the frog. I'm frantically kind of Googling you just now, because I still do occasionally art, but I'm always fascinated with kind of like people who are kind of doing the artwork on a like a side hustle, or just doing it when they're doing like the arts kind of stuff, and then they say, well, I've got the game, so I'll just do the game at the same time. I see that. Oh, this is, guys, you've got everybody that's listening. I'm going to put links to the show notes so you can check out John's elephant. So there you go. Can't say fair.
My elephant.
Can't say fairer than that. No, that's pretty cool. So this is the other thing. Does that mean that when you were designing the game, does it mean, because one of the big concerns about people when they kind of decide they're going to do the game is the art stuff. To get good art kind of costs an awful lot of money. So you kind of just like, yay, got that covered. That's no problem at all. Here we go, kind of thing. Was the art? Did you always know that the art was going to be kind of like covered off, and you just had to concentrate kind of like on the mechanics and making sure they were fine and they were working and everything like that as well?
Oddly enough, a bit of the opposite, actually. So I don't typically worry too much about the art, but the art is usually where I start.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and it's a bit counterintuitive, because I know a lot of designers will go from the other approach of, let's try to make these mechanics as polished as possible, and then like you said, look for an artist or worry about funding that art later on. So I guess my approach is more simultaneous, where I go, okay, well, I have this really cool idea for an art piece or a character, and maybe that opens up an entire world of, maybe a whole other fantasy setting or theme that a game could be based out of. And that's how Squire for Hire came to be, was drawing a squire and working backwards through the mechanics of what does a squire do, and how does he or she, kind of work the items in their bag. So that's kind of where that came from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you find that the art kind of almost changed some of the ways you were going to be working with the mechanics as well? Did it kind of inspire to say, well, if we did this, we could do that, and this could kind of like feed off each other, and it would kind of tie into kind of the look? Did you help it kind of did it help to dictate how the overall and the mechanics of the game were going to work as well? Based that you could just say, well, I'm just going to mock this up and just do this and see how this could kind of work.
Oh, definitely. That's oddly enough how the runes came to be in Mystic Runes. Was just trying to come up with new item types and new mechanics, and I hit a bit of a wall there for a while after the first Squire for Hire, and then just over the course of doodling and just drawing random things, just came up with this idea of like a stone carved rune, and then thought, well, okay, maybe these can activate some sort of power or influence the game somehow. So it kind of the same thing. It worked backwards, where I developed that art first and then found a use for it, so to speak.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there any art that kind of got left in the cutting room floor then? I mean, you're quite quick in your process. Are you able to like go, okay, done? So was a lot of stuff that you kind of like went, okay, I'm just going to leave this, or I'm going to put this for the side. Was there any stuff that you've kind of like put to the side and went, actually, this might be better suited for maybe a further expansion down the line, or potentially a stretch goal, or something like that? Yeah.
In a way, when I did the first campaign, we had there was one tier for custom cards, so people could order like their own custom Squire. I would draw it how they wanted and give it whatever items they wanted to collect, and etc. So I had 26, 27 characters left over from the first campaign. Some of those made that into the new Squire pack, which is available on this campaign now. And I have a whole new set of custom orders, which unbelievably have already sold out for this campaign. And so those could potentially, if people are open to it, could use those designs for something else later. But I'm always designing endless characters and endless drawings of everything. So there's an equal amount always on the back burner for something.
Are you a bit of a doodler then? You just sit there and kind of like draw away.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Just the situation, right, John? If you could just refer us back to the notes. Do you know that meeting that we had 3 weeks ago? If you could just tell us, and why is there a penguin in knight's armor on that piece of paper, and you're just like looking up, going, shrugging.
It's for something.
It's a thing.
I don't know what it's for yet, but it's something.
I've kind of got the notes kind of here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the kind of the mechanics of Squire for Hire for people that because let's face it, I mean, so Kickstarter's so kind of busy and noisy, and I understand there's always kind of like funded successful campaigns that people go, oh, I had no idea that ever existed or was funded or was there. But do you want to explain a little bit about how the kind of game works and the premise behind Squire for Hire?
Yeah, for sure. So it essentially you are taking on the role of a Squire, and a Squire is there to, in this case, to hold all of the hero's stuff. So presumably the hero is off on his adventure, completing the quests and doing all these things. But to do so, he needs items available and kind of within reach to be able to complete those quests. So your job as a Squire is to you're starting off with a very small bag or a loot card, and this loot card might have a weapon or a valuable or a piece of armor, something like that, and each item takes up a certain number of tiles. So on the backs of these 18 cards are story cards or like quests that you can complete. And the requirements to complete them are to have the right number of tiles of that item type. So essentially you are trying to amass enough tiles of, say, weapons if you're going to defeat an army of skeletons. And if you have that right number of tiles currently in your bag, you get to pick an option of one of two loot cards to then try to add to your existing bag. And you can do that by just making sure that one of those new items can fit in the same number of tiles. So it's kind of like you're physically actually trying to put an item into a bag space. And while you're doing that, you're trying to cover up junk, and you're trying to maybe cover up some items that a quest might require. So there's a bit of play there in terms of trying to figure out that puzzle of what do I want to get rid of, what do I want to keep, while still trying to complete the quest. I hope that kind of explains it.
And did you do a lot of like playtesting? I mean, did you reach out? Were you a member like a local kind of gaming groups or design groups? Did you do quite a lot of playtesting for Squire for Hire?
Yeah. So I have a couple close friends, and we like to sit down and playtest a lot of our own games together. There's not too much of a local playtest community where I am specifically, but between that and I have a couple online friends that we'll sit down and hash a few ideas out, or bounce around ideas with to kind of see what works and what doesn't. But it went through a lot of playtesting in terms of making sure that core loop worked well. And then from there, it was just fine tuning, especially after so many people were able to play it after the first campaign. That's when you figure out all the fine tuning bits about the rules and where things need a little bit of extra TLC in certain areas.
Yeah, how did you find the kind of the rules writing? Was that an easy thing to do? Because
no.
I know so many people that struggle with that. That just like I just can't. I'm trying to write here and I sound like a fool.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's one of those things. I think rule writing can seem easy until you give it to someone else that has no idea what you're talking about. So in my mind, I think rules writing is very easy, but every time when I send rules to someone, they're like, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. What are you talking about? So I enjoy writing the rules because I'm very thorough about making sure that everything is covered.
Yeah.
But maybe the wording is slightly off, or maybe the order of things has to be changed to just be very specific about what has to take place in what certain order, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then putting it on a challenge of putting all the rules into a space constraint, like the inside of a tiny 18 card hook box that's the challenge and the fun too.
Yeah, especially because you don't want them opening the box and realizing that 95% of the actual contents of the box is the rule book, which is always a difficult thing to kind of do. I always explain to people, well, when people say, well, how difficult can a rule book be? And it's like, well, imagine writing the rules on how to make a cup of tea, except you've got to explain everything from, you not only just got to say to people, fill the kettle with water, you've actually got to explain to them what a kettle is and where the water comes from and when exactly. They should be doing it, right, and and I had somebody say that's a really good exercise to actually get people to understand how kind of rules work, because I can spot because we do kind of like a fair number of previews, and sometimes it's easy to spot the ones where they've done the play testing, and it's also quite easy to spot the ones where they've not done as much blind play testing, where they've just said, well, there's the rules, there's the game, can I get on with it? Because it can become something that's really, really obvious to one person. It's just like, you're just like, this isn't kind of obvious at all, especially as you say, especially if you're trying to put it into like an 18 card kind of tuck box, kind of as well.
It can, it can be tricky.
At what point did Letiman Games get involved? I mean, how did that happen? Did you pitch to them, at a con or something like that, or did they kind of find you?
Yeah, so I knew of Dan and Letiman Games beforehand. Followed them on Twitter and whatnot. But I don't know if it was just some sort of personal challenge to myself, but I wanted to just sort of fund my own game and try to put it out there for the world and see kind of what I could do with something I created entirely my own. And within like the first few days of the campaign, I think Dan caught wind of it and reached out from there and said, "Hey, I'd like to take a closer look at this. Let's see if there's something we can do to maybe work together on that." So, it kind of took me by surprise very quickly, because I was like, "Oh, this is my baby, and I'm not sure how to respond to compliments." But
I've been dealing with feedback for the last 6 months, and now you're actually saying to me you really like the game and you want to have it. It's like, what's your ulterior motive, Dan? Tell us the truth, Dan.
There's a little bit of that, right? Because it's like, hey, I don't know, and not having spoken to Dan before, right? It's like, hey, what do I do in this situation? But no, Dan's been amazing to work with, and we have a great working relationship, and it's it couldn't have worked out better for either of us, I think.
Mm-hmm. So because the game was already on the Kickstarter campaign, was there less likelihood it was going to kind of get changed? Because I know of a lot of people who have signed games to get published.
Yep.
And then the game itself has kind of changed in a lot of major fundamental ways, because the core mechanics were there, but the theme wasn't maybe 100% brilliant, or the theme was amazing, but the mechanics were just a little bit too kind of bitty and kind of all over the place. So we kind of like, well, he's liking the game, but he can't possibly kind of do an awful lot of changes to the game as well. So I guess there was that kind of, we've kind of got that kind of
and part of for sure, and part of I think why I did the Kickstarter on my own to start was because I already had that creative control. So I already had the art, the design, and everything was it was there. It definitely was improved before we manufactured it. So we improved the logo and the graphic design, and went back through and did all the editing and all that stuff. But in terms of my original core vision of the game, like that still remains intact, even forward to this campaign, which Dan has been involved with from the start. So, actually, the core Squire for Hire game that I had in my head is still there. Yeah,
because you did. I mean, the first game did phenomenally well on Kickstarter. The original kind of Squire for Hire. I mean, you're only looking at 1,100 Canadian dollars.
And that was what I was looking at for my minimum order.
That's like saying, I just want to cover my first print run, please, Doris. Thanks.
That was all I wanted to do.
And then you were like, you ended up doing like 22,000. Were you just kind of sitting there going, and that must have been so strange, because I know.
Oh yeah.
Because as I say, speaking to Kickstarter creators all the time, I know there's some guys that like, they'll scrape by and they'll reach the funding goal, and then there's obviously the behemoths in the room as well that you know, not saying Isaac Childress, but we are. But they're just like, $20 million, nice one. But were you kind of like going, hey, this creating on Kickstarter thing, this is easy. I don't understand why everybody's having so much bother. I just kind of like put my game up there, and then
just throw it up there and see what happens.
Just on 22 grand, what are you all complaining about?
It was definitely a surprise, for sure. But I mean, in no way do I take it for granted. I mean, especially being a new creator that's has had little to no success before this. It's kind of a shock, but it was kind of that leap that I took to kind of see what happens.
It's just weird because you can never. It just comes down to me like somebody says, "Do you think this campaign's going to be successful?" And I'm just like, "Do you know what? I can no longer tell." There's no way I can look at anybody's campaign and go, "Yeah, that's definitely you're going to so fun by so much. It's it's going to be amazing." Because, and also at the same time, I mean, you were it was only like what $13 kind of like to get the kind of like the base game as well.
Yeah.
So you ended up like 1,300 backers. So this is like, okay, this is, you get 1,300 people as well. That must have been cool was from a business point of view, then the discussions that you had with Dan when it came to the expansion, I mean, how quickly was the talk of the expansion how quickly before that was brought to the table? I mean, and who kind of drove that as well? Was that you or was that Dan?
That was pretty equal, I think. As soon as I was done the first Kickstarter, I think before that actually, like I already knew I wanted to do something more with it. Because like there's just so much room to add items and characters and whatnot. And Dan was right on the same page. He's like, there's we could maybe do some expansions here. And I was like, yep, all right. So there really wasn't much discussion. We just kind of knew.
Oh, you're twisting my arm up my
back. The next one was gonna.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I guess we probably should, right? Yeah. So I mean, yeah, if things continue to go well, and maybe down the road, if there's more room to do that, I'd be open to it.
So I mean, has this encouraged you kind of to look at other games then? I mean, are you looking at the other portfolio and saying, well, this is fairly okay, and it was fairly, it was obviously a lot of work, but it was, it's fairly been painless. Has this kind of made you think, well, listen, I could actually I've got more ideas I want to get out there. I mean, are you now thinking about kind of like bigger games? Or you kind of think, well, the 18-card game's kind of like my wheelhouse. I kind of like that, but I've got more ideas kind of along those lines.
Oh, yeah. For sure. I mean, the irony in that is that Squire for Hire started off as actually the biggest game I ever designed.
Really?
Yeah, and it was this large sort of map-moving polyomino collection game where you're trying to fit tiles into an actual defined player board space. And it was extremely large and cumbersome and overly complicated. And as much as I would love to kind of dive into something bigger like that, I'd love smaller games because they're easy to get to the table and they're much more accessible. I can get an idea from 0 to 100 and in no time. And when I get going on an idea, I just kind of hit the gas and I get it done. So, seeing an idea come to life that much quicker is really exciting to me. And that makes me that much more passionate about the project too. So I think all those ideas that I have sitting on the back burner that are for larger games, not just in the Squire for Hire universe, but other games that are a little bit bigger, they're going to take time. They're going to take a bit more refinement to go through that whole process first. Yeah. So yeah, the micro games are definitely more attractive that way.
So for what's the fundamental difference between the Mystic Runes set? I mean, if I'm looking at the campaign, and it's obviously beautifully illustrated. Well, I'm not going to say anything else, am I? Because otherwise you'll hang up on me. But no, but fundamentally, people looking at the kind of like Mystic Runes, what's the big difference between that and the first game?
So the biggest difference, I'd say, is the kind of the namesake of the game, and that's the runes themselves, because they change they change some of the fundamental ways that the game works. So they can kind of change some of your strategies. So, for example, there are 3 different runes that you can collect, and any Squire can go for them. So it's not a matter of being restricted to only one player type can go after them, that sort of thing. One of these runes will allow you to place cards underneath of other cards in your bag. So that's something that was previously not allowed. You always had to place something kind of on the top of your bag, kind of like you would fill an actual bag. There's another rune that will change to the shape of any other item that you want. So great for if your opponent is always stealing the items that you want, but you find one of these runes, you can take it and get that item combination that you're looking for to get extra points. And then there's another rune that will it will help negate any junk items. So normally junk will deduct from your score at the end of the game. This rune will absorb anything around it to negate that. So there's a few things that will kind of change up the gameplay. And of course the new Squires. A lot of people were really excited about some new characters in the last campaign. So that was one thing. The whole game has been retooled and entirely new items. So while it's the same core experience with some new kind of mechanics thrown in, the Squire for Hire experience is still there.
In this side, I mean, one of the things that I noticed on the new campaign is you've got more kind of reviews, and you've got one from Rado as well. Mm-hmm. Is that a little bit of a nerve-wracking thing, sending things to Richard Ham? Because I know that, I know he does his playthrough kind of thing, but it is the kind of the test, isn't it? I mean, you want something quotable. You don't want him saying, "Yeah, well, it's 18 cards."
Yeah,
thanks, Richard.
No, there was a little bit of that for sure. I had a little bit of an intro conversation with Richard, and he seemed receptive to getting the game and trying it out, and liked the look of it, and then he sent me the video, and it was like just going on about the love he has for it, and that he just loves playing it solo, and just all these kind of these great compliments. And not that I expect it to be 100% negative, but there's always that creators are their own worst critic, and I think I was just in my own head too much about that. So to hear the nice things was just, it was reaffirming, I guess.
Did you end up like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar, watching the video where you started just?
Oh, you mean where he's bawling his eyes out?
As you were watching
not quite.
it, and as he was kind of like Rado's going through his little talk, and he's starting to say some really nice things. Did you find yourself welling up a bit? I'm just saying, it's okay to share.
Oh, maybe a little bit of a tear.
Just a little, just like that. Honey, you been cutting onions in that kitchen again? Because I don't know, something's happening to my eyes here, kind of thing.
It's those onions.
But it must be, at the same time, it must be really nice to get somebody who kind of isn't connected to the game, just kind of like sitting there going, yeah, this is really good. I'm really, really having a good time. I'm kind of enjoying kind of playing it. As a little bit of validation, because when you get feedback from the family, I could stick like 5 bits of white card in front of my mum and just write, right, I don't like your cats. And she would go, this is a really good game. I really, really like this.
Yeah.
But it's a different, I mean, even if even people are still going to be quite, I mean, there's someday when you get like the critics coming in, is it nice to kind of get that kind of validation? You're going like, yeah, this was, because this is something you've probably spent easily probably 100 hours of your time kind of putting together and doing the art for and stuff like that. So is it kind of cool to get that kind of level of validation?
It is, yeah. And not that, if a review came back entirely negative, I'm an artist, I'm used to critique and criticism and things like that. So that wouldn't necessarily bother me, but it's nice to kind of have that validation, and especially from someone outside of my inner circle to kind of give me that push to say, hey, someone's actually acknowledging that you're doing this and you've done something pretty well, and that definitely helps alleviate my imposter syndrome to think that that luck streak is going to run out. But no, it's very good to, very nice to hear those things, and from anyone, any type of support like that is just great.
I mean, because at the moment you're actually at the time of recording, you're pretty much in the same situation where you finished the amount that you got with the first campaign is where you are kind of just now with the second campaign, which is pretty cool.
As you say that, I'm noticing it. And it's a bit surreal. So yeah, I'm looking here. So I'm at just shy of what the last campaign made after 3 days, I think. So very cool. But yeah,
that is kind of pretty cool. But what I mean in terms of pledge levels, because let's talk about how much are people going to need to spend in order to kind of again join you in this journey, man.
Yeah. So you were looking at the Journeyman pledge, weren't you?
I am looking at the Journeyman pledge.
Yeah. So we got a couple different levels, and one is just you get the Mystic Runes standalone expansion, which gives you the second core set, which you can play entirely on its own, or you can mix it with the first Squire for Hire, and you get up to like a 4-player experience that way. And it's $12 Canadian plus shipping. So we try to keep it very close to what we had for the first campaign. It's a micro game, so it's it is what it is. But we also are introducing a new character pack with this one. So with a lot of the characters that I wanted to implement for this new expansion, I had so many left over, and people really wanted more characters to play as. So we're thinking, well, there's an opportunity to kind of do some sort of like a mini expansion with the extra characters. So I've been drawing some extra ones to add in. So now we have 18 new characters that are compatible, split between the old Squire for Hire and the new one. And if you have both copies of the game, you can use them for both sets. And that one is slightly discounted. So we have the character pack at kind of like a discounted rate. So it's $22 plus the $3 shipping for both of those sets. $4 shipping Canadian, sorry.
And that's Canadian dollars, people. That's Canadian dollars. So to give you an indication, Canadian dollars, it's 22, the Journeyman level, which is 22 Canadian dollars. That's £13 in UK money, which means it's going to be about $17 American money, roughly.
Yeah, about 16, 17 American.
Yeah. And if you went for the Hero Pack, which gets you everything, the Mystic Runes core set, the core set 1 and the Squire Pack, that's about £19, or about $23 to $24. So it really is. It's inexpensive. I'm not going to say cheap, because cheap sounds like somebody that hangs around corners and wears wears tacky clothing. But so there it goes. So it's next to nothing. And you can play. Can you play it solo mode, John? This is what the big question. The question of the day is at the moment is, I've got this lovely collection of board games, and I've realised that 87% I can't play by myself. But yes, there is a solo mode in the game as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I'm not going to say most players, but a fair number of players do play it solo. So whether they're on their lunch break at work or got some spare time, I've seen lots of people have it on one of those fold-down tables on an airplane, just playing it like that. So that was really cool to see, actually, is just people kind of pulling it out of their bag whenever they have a spare moment and playing a few rounds, trying to complete it with each Squire to get, to see what score they can get with each one. So that's really cool to see is the solo mode taking off.
Fits in your back pocket. In fact, leave your mobile phone at home and use the space that you've freed up for your mobile phone to put a copy of this game in its place instead.
Exactly.
That is what I'm saying. That is how we do it. That is definitely how we do it. Yeah. Have you got anything more kind of planned on the art side then? I mean, are you going to continue? are you now going to be kind of continue to be focused on the tabletop board game side of stuff, or are you now, you know, are you still going to continue with the art stuff as you kind of go?
Oh yeah, so the art stuff has always been there, and it always will be there. So, but especially after the first campaign, and you know, the freelance graphic design thing has really picked up. So I've been doing logos and some graphic design for some newer games hitting Kickstarter, and game companies looking for a logo and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's been very cool to not only have that side hustle kind of turn into something that's I'm also passionate about. So it's yeah, and something that I'm doing currently, which is, you know, launching the Kickstarter and doing all that design work myself is really cool to see that lead into more work. Is it's very cool.
So you're kind of drifting, kind of purposefully but successfully into the industry, kind of that way. Which drifting, is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Just drifting, drifting through the art and board game world.
Just go in there, just landing, hitting a couple of really successful Kickstarters on my way as I'm doing it, but still doing my watercolor. There's a frog, there's an elephant, kind of thing, which is kind of cool at the same time. If people want to, kind of, if they listened along today and they went, he's quite. I like the cut of his jib, and a man that paints watercolor frogs can't go wrong, or uses pastels. Let's do this. Where can they find you on the internet webs if they wanted to find you on the internet webs, John?
Sure. So I have a website. It's johnmerchant.webs.com, and that's my typical website for a lot of my fine art and stuff like that. I do have an ArtStation account, Instagram, Twitter. It's all under John Merchant 21. That's the username for all three. And a lot of people reach out to me on Twitter. I'm pretty active on there in terms of board game design, artwork, that sort of thing. So it's a good place to kind of keep up with what I'm doing. I think that's about it.
And we'll put the Kickstarter link and everything. We'll put it all in the show notes so that people can track you down. In a nice way.
In a nice way? Okay. I appreciate it.
In a nice way. We shall do that.
Sounds great.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
I appreciate your time. For everybody who's listened along tonight, if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, you should know by now. You can find us currently in my house, because I'm not allowed to leave. But if you want to find us online, then you can find us in all the different kind of worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for the egg and spoon races. We're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and we're on YouTube, where we try and be funny. And we've got our website, and we've got our blog, and just like spreading. I'm not going to make a joke. If you like what you listened to tonight, then tell somebody else about us, because that's how we kind of spread. Like butter, I guess. If you like what you've listened to tonight, then consider going on to Apple Podcasts and dropping us a rating or a review. If you are going to be dropping us a rating or a review, then don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed. But at the same time, don't give us 1 star because don't make me any sadder, basically. But give us something in the middle, like a 5, because we're average, just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average is rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Mr. John Merchant. So, again, thank you very, very much, Mr. Merchant. There is only 2 things we do. There is the continuing terrible joke that we run, which is to ask and remind everybody that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, John?
No. No, we're not.
That was absolute conviction. That's what I like to hear. God bless you and all who sail in you. And the other thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from John. Say goodbye, John.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe more than ever. Roll 6s. Make something awful. And if things are just a little bit heavy at the moment, maybe just consider getting yourself a little Squire for hire. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.